Reflections on the Good News of Jesus Christ for the 32nd Sunday of Ordinary Time from the Gospel according to Mark. In the course of his teaching, Jesus said to the crowds, "Beware of the scribes who like to go around in long robes and accept greetings in the marketplaces, seats of honor in synagogues, and places of honor at banquets. They devour the houses of widows and, as a pretext, recite lengthy prayers. They will receive a very severe condemnation." He sat down opposite the treasury and observed how the crowd put money into the treasury. Many rich people put in large sums. A poor widow also came and put in 2 small coins worth a few cents. Calling his disciples to himself, Jesus said to them, "I tell you truly, this poor widow put in more than all the other contributors to the treasury, for they have all contributed from their surplus wealth. But she, from her poverty, has contributed all she had, her whole livelihood." The good news of the Lord. Raising children is a real challenge. The responsibilities of providing for their safety and health, of teaching them manners and values. But 4-year-old Noah's mom and dad also want to instill in their little boy a sense of social responsibility and compassion. How? Mom and dad insist that Noah takes 1/3 of all the money he gets as gifts and allowances and shares it. Noah can choose with whom he shares that 1/3. The other 2/3 are divided into spending money and money saved for the future. The third that Noah is to share can be given to people on a street corner, or to his friends, or even to the church collection basket. The choice is Noah's. But each month, 1/3 of his income needs to be shared. Good for Noah, and good for his parents, who are instilling in their son a natural respect for others and how sharing wealth, resources, and time is the key to deeper satisfaction in life. Noah's parents' insistence on guiding their son in his early stages of philanthropy will result in one less person in society being selfish, greedy, and short-sighted. Noah will grow up considering his good fortune as something he fully earned, yet not something to cling to. Noah's mom and dad want to teach Noah not just the act of giving, but the attitude of giving. They want Noah to realize all he has to be grateful for, and that such gratitude should translate into generosity. It is that attitude that Jesus exalts in the widow's gift. In the economy of God, numbers are not the true value of giving. It is what we give from our want, not from our extra, that reflects what we truly value, what good we actually want to accomplish, what we really want our lives and world to be. In the gospel scheme of things, it is not the amount of the gift, but the measure of the love, selflessness, and commitment that directs the gift that is great before God. For Christ calls us not to seek greater things or talents to astound the world, but for greater love and selflessness with which to enrich the world. Noah. We live in a very image-conscious society. Status, respect, and face are very important. How we are seen is more important than who we really are. The scribes and Pharisees are presented today as very image-conscious. It was more important to be seen and thought of as good and holy than to be really so. That's why in today's gospel, Jesus says, "Beware of the scribes," who liked to walk around in long robes and be greeted with respect in the marketplaces, have the best seats in the synagogues and places of honor at banquets. In fact, scribes, as interpreters of the law, were deeply respected for their great learning. They wore long white robes as a sign of their devotion to the law. People were supposed to stand in their presence and greet them with titles like master or father. The problem was that they began to feel that such respect was a right, and this was accompanied by arrogance and pomposity. The respect for God's law, they began to arrogate for themselves. All of us can think of people in prominent positions in our own society who behave in a similar manner. They include some belonging to the nobility, those whose only claim to prominence is that they were born into a particular family, certain political leaders, some people in well-paid professions, some people who simply have a lot of money to throw around and can surround themselves with the perks of luxury. And last but not least, some church and religious leaders. At the same time, Jesus accuses the scribes of being rapacious exploiters who devour widows' houses while making an outward show of piety. Power and position are all too frequently linked with material greed and corruption. Again, church leaders cannot always claim innocence. In our own time, we have seen some so-called televangelists raking in contributions from thousands of simple people and then living the high life and even an immoral life on these contributions. All of these things we can observe in our own society. We see rich socialites anxious to make the world's 10 best dressed list. When some famous celebrity, for example, a member of the family of the US president or of royalty, comes to town, there are people who jockey to get into the welcoming banquet and to be seated near, and above all, to be seen to be seated near the distinguished guest of honor. We see politicians, community leaders, and even clerics who not only get but demand to be treated specially. We know of people in England desperate for that knighthood, or in France for the Legion of Honor, or people lusting after other prizes and honors that are dished out every year. When we are concerned about image and face, when we are worried about what people are thinking of us or are anxious about whether our weaknesses are too visible, we cannot relate to other people freely and concentrate on how we can be of help to them, because we're thinking too much about ourselves. In speaking about the scribes and Pharisees, the gospel is really talking to us Christians who suffer from exactly the same problems as they did. It is the Pharisees in our own midst that we need to be concerned about. Even more, it is the Pharisee in myself that should be a cause of most concern. The second part of the gospel shows a very different picture, and yet there are connections. The linking word between the two is widow. The poorest people in Jesus' society are represented by orphans and widows. In a society with no social welfare, these were people often without family support. The orphan, by definition, has no family and no means of support and is not wanted. The widow, in a society where husbands could often die young of disease or death in war, may often have been relatively young herself. In a world of arranged marriages, she might never be chosen again as a bride. With her husband dead, she was of no interest either to her husband's family or even her own. If she had no children, She was alone and uncared for, and possibly, and perhaps even probably, reduced to poverty. There is a striking contrast between the poor widow described in the second part of today's gospel and the scribes and Pharisees in the first part. The simple piety of this woman of no social standing is contrasted with the arrogance and social ambitions of some so-called religious leaders. She is also contrasted with the rich donors ostentatiously offering money that they can easily afford. It is doubtful that what they gave involved even the slightest lessening of their standard of living. How often have we foregone a vacation or a weekend away or even a single meal in a restaurant, but instead given the money for it to people who were living on the edge of society? Again, the gospel is pointing the finger at us and not to people who lived a long time ago. This poor woman, in a daring act of trust in God's providence, put into the treasury everything she had, 2 small coins, next to nothing, and she put in both of them. It may seem a foolish thing to do, but there are numerous examples of people doing this in the service of the gospel. The gospel today is saying it is only when we realize that God and the way of Jesus is the only real source of security that we will find the happiness, peace, and security we all long for. It is not money or property or university degrees or professional status or health that really matter. These can all disappear without warning. What really matters is that people take care of each other. This widow, who gives up everything she has to God and puts all her trust in God, is a symbol of Jesus himself, who will soon make the total offering of his life, his work, and his good name to his Father out of love for us. This story is also meant to be a summation of all Jesus' teaching about discipleship. He wishes us to identify with this apparent nobody over against the avaricious, arrogant, ambitious, image-conscious mindset represented by some of the scribes and Pharisees and the wealthy temple-goers, the rich and famous of the day. In fact, the widow was anything but a nobody. She had a greatness which they totally lacked. What matters is not what we have or what we can get, not what we can do or what people think of us. What matters is that I be fully, freely, truly my real self before God and before others. When Hurricane Katrina devastated New Orleans 19 years ago, parish in Maryland wanted to do something. The Maryland pastor heard an interview with the pastor of the parish in Rayne, Louisiana, who explained how his parish was working to provide housing to those driving up from New Orleans to flee the storm. The priest in Maryland contacted the Louisiana pastor to ask what he needed. The pastor in Louisiana explained that the New Orleans folks who had come to his parish seeking help had to evacuate their homes, bringing little or nothing with them. They needed simple things, like a toothbrush or a towel or a change of underwear. So the Maryland parish decided the quickest and easiest way to help was to purchase Walmart gift cards so people could buy what they needed. Before they were done, the Maryland community had purchased almost $20,000 in Walmart gift cards, all in $25 and $50 amounts. They bought so many cards that their Maryland Walmart had to have more cards shipped from their corporate headquarters in Arkansas. The Louisiana pastor said he was the most popular man in Louisiana for a time, and the parishioners in Maryland were thrilled to be able to do something practical and immediate, that their help went directly to people in need. The widow's mite can take any number of forms, from someone's last $5 given to a hungry beggar to a $25 Walmart gift card for a storm refugee. In the gospel scheme of things, it's not the dollar value of the gift that matters, but the attitude of the giver seeking to follow Jesus' example of humble generosity. It's not the elegance of the gift, but the joy experienced in being able to do good for someone in need. It's not the gratitude of the receiver of the gift, but the thankfulness of the giver to be able to make the gift. In exalting the gift of the poor widow, Jesus wants us to realize that in the economy of God, numbers are not the true value of giving. It's what we give from our want, not from our extra, that reflects what we truly value, what good we can actually want to accomplish, what we really want our lives and world to be. Even a toothbrush and a clean pair of socks can be the perfect offering of thanks to the God of all blessings. Thanks for listening.